Like a lot of people, I watch quite a bit of anime. I am also a mathematics instructor at my local university, specializing in elementary math curriculum. And quite often, when I watch things that have elements of math in them, I can't help but think about them on sort of a professional mindset, I guess. And I decided, just for fun, to do a little bit of an analysis on something that I am a big fan of lately. So I want to talk a little bit about some math and anime and manga. I have no idea if I'm going to do more of these or not. This just seemed like fun. I wanted to look at a show that I'm relatively new here called Spy X Family. I have been reading the manga since it came out, and after the anime just wrapped up its first season, fantastic show by the way, I can't help but think about it. So, Spy X Family is written and illustrated by Tatsuya Endo, and according to Wikipedia, they have written other things, none of which I have heard of, but this is not really my stuff I keep track of. Anyway, so it started in 2019, the manga did, and it was published in Shonen Jump Plus, which, again, according to Wikipedia, is a online offshoot of Shonen Jump. As for me, I read it on the Viz app because I have a subscription to all the things. It's fun. Anyway, an anime of this started in 2020, made by Wit Studio and Cloverworks. It does also have the most fantastic opening song, so if you want to check that out, it's definitely worth a listen. So anyway, quick overview of the story here. Spy X Family takes place in a world where East and West Germany, Ostania and Westalis, are at the brink of war with each other. So very much Cold War era story. Our protagonist is a spy named Twilight. He's from Westalis, working undercover in Ostania, and he's working very hard to prevent the war. So he gets an unusual mission one day, and the anime explains it so much better than I can, so let's check this out.
こんにちは、あるいはこんばんは、黄昏君。先の任務ご苦労であった。さて、早速次の任務だ。標的は国家統一党総裁ドノバン・デズモンド。君の使命は彼に近づき、その不穏な動きを探ること。そのためにまず結婚して子供をこさえる。君は子供をこの学校へ入学させ、懇親会へ潜入せ。なお入学までの期限が迫っているため、猶予は1週間とする。
Even for a master spy like Twilight, this is a massive undertaking. So he needs a child to get into this school. In comes our second main character, Anya. Anya is a little girl that he adopts from a rather shady orphanage. She happens to be telepathic, which is not the weirdest thing in this story, honestly. It's mostly played for jokes, but it does allow her to understand sort of what's going on here. She's also ridiculously cute, so she is the child that he needs to get into the school. So according to the manga, this is set in the late 1960s. If you squint really closely at a frame from the newspaper that he's reading, it does say, I think, 1967. So very height of the tensions between East and West Germany in the real world. Now, I actually don't have a lot of information about elementary mathematics in 1960s East Germany. I know that they thought it was important. There was a real push in that era to get all of the kids into school and educated, since this was sort of communism and their big thing was that everybody was equal. and they wanted to prove themselves superior to the rest of the world, there was a big push on the importance of schooling and education. But as far as finding the specifics about the mathematics curriculum, I wasn't able to find anything right away. I also didn't look very hard because I'm just making this video for fun. But I do have quite a bit of knowledge about elementary school curriculum in the United States, and the information about elementary school curriculum in current Japan was not that difficult to find. So that's really what I'm going to be looking at here. First off, Twilight needs to get this girl enrolled in school. He's doubtful at first because he doesn't think that Anya looks old enough, saying you have to be at least 6 years old to enroll in the school. She tells him she's 6 years old. Honestly, she's probably 5, but that's not all that important. I looked it up, and in Japan, first grade does usually start when children are 6 years old. So this is accurate. It does make sense to have 6-year-olds enrolling in a school starting at first grade. Eden Academy seems to be a first grade all the way up through high school. Now, in order for a student to be admitted to Eden Academy, they have to pass an entrance exam. This does make sense. Eden is a fancy private elite school, and that is true nowadays as well. A lot of fancy private schools do have an entrance exam, even for elementary school. Although, realistically, it is more to judge the behavior and emotional development of a kid to see how well they will fit in with the environment of the school. But that's not quite the case here. In this case, in Spy X Family, it is a real entrance exam. And I think in Japan, most people in the target audience are very, very familiar with the idea of students having to do an entrance exam to get into school. First grade, but again, this is an elite fancy private school, so I guess that makes sense. However, leaving nothing to chance, our heroes, of course, are going to cheat. They got the answers to the exam so that Anya doesn't have to actually know anything. She just has to be able to memorize the answer. Now, like I said, I think first graders probably wouldn't necessarily be taking a super formal exam like this, but let's take a look at how this plays out in the show. So all of these kids are very stressed out, which does make sense. These are 6-year-olds, so just exiting kindergarten, about to start first grade. But what are the questions on the exam that are panicking them so much? Well, a panel from the manga, this is the only part of the test that we can see. It is very hard to read, but looking at it carefully here, I can definitely see that the first question does have a clock on it, so that's probably something to do with telling time. And the second question has a triangle in it, and the sides are labeled. So maybe we're finding the area or the perimeter of that sort of triangle. The questions after that I can't make out at all, but they're probably not super mathy, so I'm not going to worry about that. Also, you're probably not necessarily supposed to be able to read these anyway. In the anime, actually, you can get a good, clear-ish picture of the exam that Anya is looking at here. It's still very hard to read, and allowing for English and the fact that you're probably not supposed to read this anyway, but I'm going to do my best here to try and make sense out of this. Just like in the manga, we have 2 questions that appear to be related to a clock, so something with telling time. Then question number 3, again, has something to do with triangles, although it is very hard to read. So, as I said earlier in the video, getting information about the current math curriculum in Japan wasn't really that hard. I found this online. It is a translation of a guide to teaching math, grades 1 through 6. It is dated 2010, but following more into it, it seems like it's supposed to be applicable from 2011 to 2019. And since the manga first came out in 2019, I am gonna assume that this is pretty contemporary with what the author of the manga would have known about. Remember, at least 2 of the questions on the exam seem to have something to do with a clock. Well, according to this guide, clock reading is a part of elementary school curriculum. And just this screenshot from the document that I found says that in grade 1, students are taught how to tell time from a clock with long and short hands. Also, it is important to help students become interested in time by relating time to activities in their daily life. So, looking at this question here with the clock, something that could be reasonable to ask a kid of on his age is, what time does this clock show? And 11 o'clock. Another question maybe would be, if this is 11 in the morning, what sort of activities could you be doing? Or if this is 11 at night, what sort of activities could you be doing? Now, if I read this very carefully, my best guess is that this says, solve if you understand how to read the clock. What time will be 2 hours after the current time? Near as I can tell, that's what this is supposed to say. So, reasonable question here. However, this is not just reading a clock. There's more knowledge that kids need to be able to understand this. This actually, I would say, falls under the category of something that is called progression of time. As I looked through the curriculum guide, I found in 3rd grade, time is mentioned again. And one of the suggested things that kids are taught about, I highlighted it here. Students are taught about units of time, seconds, and how to determine clock time and elapsed time. That is really what this question on the entrance exam is asking. What time is it 2 hours later? So actually, on this entrance exam, for kids that are not even in 1st grade yet, this is a 3rd grade question. Okay, Eden Academy is presented as a super elite, fancy, smart kids school. So sure, maybe. I could see this being something that kids at home could pick up from their parents. Now, the other question that I can sort of see on the exam from the anime has to do with this triangle. It is an equilateral triangle. I think all 3 sides are supposed to say 3 centimeters, but that's what it says in the screenshot from the manga. Near as I can tell, this says find the area and volume. I can't quite make out the next word. I might say right. Find the area and volume of the right triangle, and then I don't really know what the rest of that is supposed to say. First off, that's not a right triangle. Secondly, volume. You can't find the volume of a triangle. That does not make sense. While I do accept the fact that you're probably not supposed to be able to read this anyway, I mean, this image is on the screen for like half a second. But even still, really? But we'll ignore that part and we'll just say that this question here is to find the area of this triangle. Fair enough. Okay, so when would that be in elementary school curriculum? Well, I found this paragraph about geometric figures, and it says, in grade 1, shapes that appear in everyday student life or everyday life of students are used. Both plane figures and solid figures are taught. So students would learn to recognize maybe triangles. Then it goes on to say, and then square, rectangle, and right triangle and box shape are in 2nd grade. We introduced the terms isosceles triangle, equilateral triangle in 3rd grade. So, okay, specific types of triangle getting into 3rd grade. But this question asks for area. When does that come up? I read through the whole document, and I finally found it in grade 5. Fifth grade is where one of the objectives is to help pupils determine the areas of geometric figures such as triangles and other things. So fifth grade is when we start learning about triangle area. So this first question about the clock, that's a third grade question. And remember, these kids are not in first grade yet. So this is late kindergarten. Is this a bit too advanced? Yeah, but reasonable for a super fancy elite school? I do think so. This is not entirely out of bounds for a 6-year-old to maybe be able to answer. But this other question with the triangle area, that's fifth grade at best. Equilateral triangles like that, to figure out the area from the information given, that might even be borderline 5th, 6th grade. So definitely way too hard to be asking a 6-year-old to figure out. No wonder those kids in the video were freaking out. Anya does pass the exam primarily because she cheats. They do give her score, but I have no idea what that means because they don't have it out of anything. And I've got to assume that this was a general knowledge exam, not just math. I used quite a few sources when I was looking at this video to find out the information that I needed about this school in Japan. But these are the different places that I found. And of course, screenshots from Wikipedia and Crunchyroll for the video clip and Viz for the screenshots from the manga. I've never made a video like this before for YouTube. Primarily, I have made educational lecture videos for my class, but I thought that this would be fun. Who knows if I'll do this again? I don't know, but it was fun to make, and maybe someone else will watch it.